Project management has been around for hundreds of years. Consider the pyramids of Giza, the Taj Mahal, and other great wonders of the world. Consider our rapidly changing world, from robots to driverless vehicles to space travel and establishing a colony on Mars. Now consider the implication for these projects if a person did not take charge and step up to manage a project. Who would bring the team together? And who would manage timelines, funding, and resources? Who would check the quality and make sure the team works towards a single goal? In fact, one might question whether these projects would have been completed at all if there was no project manager. Project management is a key factor in bringing dreams and concepts to life. Welcome to the first lesson in project management, where we discuss what is project management. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to list the characteristics of a project, identify internal and external stakeholders, manage project constraints, apply project management methodologies, including Waterfall and Agile, analyze the project lifecycle, and investigate project management tools and techniques. Let's start with unpacking the concept of a project. According to the Project Management Institute, or PMI, a project is a temporary endeavor with a defined beginning and end, undertaken to meet unique goals and objectives, typically to bring about beneficial change or added value. From this definition, we can identify the first three characteristics of a project. Firstly, projects are temporary, with a clear start and end, whether in respect of a timeline, a start and end date, a given budget, or the start and completion of a given goal. Secondly, projects are unique. Even though similar projects may be undertaken in a familiar pattern, each project is unique in some way or another. The team, the location, or a goal may differ. Projects are not business as usual, in other words. Thirdly, projects are implemented to bring about change with the intention to improve or enhance. In addition to these characteristics, we need to understand that projects require resources, for example, materials, budgets, and people. Projects present a level of uncertainty or risk. Because projects are unique, it is difficult to estimate the exact time and cost of a project. Additional threats and opportunities may be encountered. Projects are also progressive, and details often become clear as the project unfolds, and this is risky. Finally, projects have a primary customer, in project management referred to as a sponsor. Let's look at an example of a project. You are approached to manage a project to build a bridge. Funding has been supplied by the council for raw materials, labor, and the design of the bridge. The purpose of the bridge is to allow hikers to safely cross the river and access a nearby picnic site without disturbing the surrounding nature. Situated in a nature reserve, summer is the most popular hiking season, allowing 3 weeks to construct the bridge. Here, the project will end once the bridge is complete, ideally within 3 weeks. The unique goal is to allow hikers to cross a river, and the value added or rationale for completing this project is to allow access to a picnic site, as well as secure the safety of the hikers and the nature surrounding it. The project will require several resources, including materials, contractors, and budgets, to name a few. There are also numerous risks, ranging from weather conditions, security of the site, availability of resources, and so forth. And finally, this project is owned by a primary sponsor, who in this case is the council. Project management is the process of leading the work of a team to achieve all project goals within the given constraints. Again, considering our bridge building project, if we look at project management in its most basic form, we will approach our project by looking at what you aim to achieve. The goal is, in this case, to allow hikers to cross the river safely. How you plan to achieve it? You're going to build a secure bridge with sturdy railings. These are our deliverables. How much time do we have? In this case, we have 3 weeks. Lastly, we consider costs. In this case, we have limited funding provided by the council. The pivotal role within project management is that of the project manager, which is defined as a person in overall charge of the planning and execution of a particular project. Now, projects require the collaboration of several role players, referred to as stakeholders. Project stakeholders are individuals and companies who have something to gain and or lose from the project. Stakeholders are affected by the project, and their input in turn can impact the outcome of the project. Stakeholders can be divided into two categories: internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. Focusing on our internal stakeholders, which we'll refer to as our key players, the hierarchy can be depicted as follows. Our pivotal role is that of the project manager. In the broader sense, project managers are responsible for planning, organizing, and directing the completion of specific projects for an organization. The project manager must manage their timeline, budgets, and scope to ensure project objectives and stakeholder expectations are met. The project manager also takes responsibility for communicating with project stakeholders. The project manager will delegate tasks to the project team members, who then proceed to complete the tasks. The project team includes individuals who together have the needed skills and expertise to complete the project successfully. These can include dedicated staff or part-time contractors. The project team and their related activities must be skillfully coordinated by the project manager to ensure the project runs smoothly. The project manager is generally appointed by the project executive, who ensures the project meets its objectives and delivers the project benefits. Where the project manager focuses on smaller details and tasks within the project, the executive considers the bigger picture, representing the customer and taking responsibility for the business case. Project executives are workplace managers that directly manage short and long-term projects, communicating with upper management and monitoring project performance both internally and externally. This individual should ensure that the project maintains its business focus and that it has clear authority that the work, including risks, is actively managed. The project executive is appointed by the project sponsor, who is the main driving force behind a program or project. A project sponsor takes responsibility for the success of a project. A sponsor provides direction and funding as an individual or on behalf of a company. Apart from these key role players, external stakeholders must also be considered. External stakeholders could include individuals that are not necessarily part of your organization or directly involved in the project, but are affected by the project in some way or another. Project stakeholders could include investors, end users, suppliers, government, manufacturers, media, contractors, or community members. To effectively manage the various elements and components of a project, projects are broken into 5 phases that make up what we refer to as the project lifecycle. In the initiation phase, the need is identified, whether a problem to correct or an opportunity for growth. Next, tasks that must be completed are recorded and a plan of action is formulated. Once the plan is clear, it's time to execute the work in accordance with the plan. Monitoring takes place to ensure the project starts on track and is executed in line with the project plan. Once the project is completed, the project is closed in the final phase of the life cycle. Upon closing the project, final deliverables are provided and project success is determined. A project can often go back and forth between the planning, executing, and monitoring phase. If during the monitoring phase, it is discovered that the project does not align with the required standards. In this case, it would be necessary to head back to the planning phase, adjust the plan, execute the new plan, and monitor the project once again until the project meets requirements. We'll discuss each phase in detail throughout the course, but as a brief introduction, let's see how a bridge building project will unfold throughout the project lifecycle. During the initiation phase, the project manager aims to define the project scope. What is the extent of work that needs to be completed? Consider the feasibility of the project. Is it practical, all things considered, to build this bridge? And ensure that project goals are aligned with project sponsor and stakeholder expectations. In this case, the project is to build a bridge, and the expectation is that it will help hikers safely cross the river. In the planning phase, it's firstly necessary to break the project goals down into smaller tasks. In the case of our bridge project, smaller tasks would include, for example, measuring the river width and proposed length of the bridge, planning and designing the bridge construction, and sourcing the different raw materials for constructing the bridge. Once the tasks are identified, it's necessary to consider how each task will be completed, what is required to do this effectively, and who will be able to execute this task best. Once planning is done, it's time to execute the plan. Here the bridge is physically built in accordance with the details set out in the plan. The project manager will assign roles to team members and collect and allocate available resources and budgets for specific tasks. Monitoring requires a continual comparison between the progress made and the planned objectives to ensure project success. In our bridge scenario, we would need to monitor progress and ensure that the bridge is completed by the set due date and that the safety and quality of the bridge will enable hikers to safely cross the river. Now let's say, for example, the wood chosen is of poor quality or not suitable for extreme weather conditions. In this case, the quality is not up to standard and the plan would need to be adjusted to accommodate the sourcing of a different type of wood. The timelines and budgets would also need to be updated to accommodate the setback. Once the plan is adjusted, we'll head back to the execution phase and finally monitoring. Only once all the requirements are met and the project goals are achieved do we move on to closing the project. At this point, the project manager will compile reports, hand over the deliverables, and release the team. A project's success is dependent on the project constraints being managed to meet project objectives and sponsor expectations. Projects are constrained by what is referred to as the triple constraint or iron triangle: scope, time, and cost. Scope is the defined features and functions of a project, or simply put, the extent of work needed to finish a project. Time is the time required or allowed for the completion of a project, and cost refers to the budget allocated or the cost incurred to complete a project. A successful project would require the balance of these three competing goals, and you may need to manage trade-offs between the scope, time, and cost goals. For example, you may need to adjust the scope of a project to meet the time and cost goals. Relating this to our bridge project, success would require that in terms of scope, time, and cost goals, a bridge is built within 3 weeks within the budget provided by the council. Our sponsor's expectation is that the bridge allows hikers to cross a river without disturbing the surrounding nature. And a key project objective is that hikers are able to cross the river safely for the purpose of accessing a nearby picnic site. Depending on the project, different methodologies can be used to secure best results and project success. Project methodologies refer to a set of principles, tools, and techniques that are used to plan, execute, and manage projects. For the purpose of this course, we'll focus on two popular methodologies, Waterfall and Agile. Waterfall is a traditional approach, following a sequential design process where each step is completed in a linear order, allowing project completion in a single process. Agile is the more modern iterative methodology that incorporates a cyclic and incremental approach. The methodology is flexible and caters for the completion of a collection of smaller projects within the process. Let's first consider the waterfall approach in more detail. Waterfall is a 5-phase linear approach, starting with establishing requirements, moving on to design, implementation, verification, and finally, maintenance. With the waterfall, it is necessary to complete each step before moving on to the next. Let's use an example to demonstrate the process. You're asked to design a website for a client. The first step includes gathering project requirements and compiling a product requirements document. Once these requirements are agreed to and signed off by your client, it allows you to plan the steps to follow without involving the customer any further and to complete the project in a single process. Using the waterfall methodology, the customer will not see the project until it is complete, making this an incredibly important step. The design phase is broken up into logical design sub-phases. For the website design example, this includes your software architecture and considering the order in which web pages would need to be built. In the implementation phase, the programs or web developers will start working on the functionality of the website, allowing end users to navigate through the website and perform different functionalities. In the verification phase, it's the customer's turn to review the project and ensure it is aligned with the requirements confirmed in the first phase. The final phase is maintenance. This phase involves refining the website to ensure specifications are met. Your customer will be using the software daily and may report errors or challenges, for example, the speed of the program, which would then need to be corrected. Unlike the rigid linear structure of the waterfall methodology, Agile provides a more flexible and interactive approach with focus on continuous releases that incorporate customer feedback, allowing teams to adapt and adjust quickly. Using the same website example using the Agile method, we'll start off by planning our project and answering questions including what do we want to achieve in this project? What is our project goal? We will then move on to defining the requirements. What exactly does this customer want? And how can this be delivered? Next, development and implementation takes place, where code is developed and the website is launched to allow for an initial phase of testing. The initial phase of testing occurs once developers are confident and satisfied with the initial development. The testing is handed over to another team who will test the features and report on any errors and challenges that could include broken links, bugs, web pages not working, and so forth. Passing initial testing, the recorded errors are handed back to the development team for further development and implementation. Once the improvements are made, the site can be handed over to the client for testing and sign-off. If the client is satisfied, the project moves to a system testing phase and is finally released once tests yield a satisfactory outcome. Where the client, however, is not satisfied and does not approve the project, change requirements will be noted and must be incorporated with a second iteration. These iterations or circles of development and testing will loop until the client signs off approval and the product is ready for release. The term iteration here refers to the time allotted to complete a selected amount of work. An iteration could be between 2 to 4 weeks, and the amount of work that can be completed in each iteration will be dependent on the time allotted as well as the level of skill and expertise of the team. When using the Agile methodology, prioritizing is key for each iteration. The work with the biggest possible return on investment should be completed first to allow for the release of a profitable minimum viable product before moving on to perfection, if necessary. A popular concept for product delivery, specifically in terms of software and app development nowadays, is that of an MVP, or a minimum viable product. An MVP is a version of a product with just enough features to be usable by early customers. Customers can then provide feedback which may be incorporated for future product development. The release of an MVP helps companies avoid potentially lengthy and unnecessary work. MVPs are greatly beneficial as it allows you to save time and resources by ensuring investments are made in projects that will likely succeed. An MVP allows you to test whether the product is appealing to potential users before the full investment is made, and it allows you to take advantage of trends when moving on to developing the full version of the project. Finally, it allows you to acquire a potential user base. Project management tools are a project manager's answer to manage projects. Project managers must show competence in what is known as the 10 knowledge areas. And thankfully, tools and techniques can be incorporated to optimize the project management process and secure success. For example, project integration can be managed through project charters and by choosing an appropriate project methodology. Statements of work and work breakdown structures work well in defining and managing the scope. Time can effectively be managed by Gantt charts and costs with budgets. Probability and impact metrics can be used to manage risk. As we move through this course, we will introduce you to some of the most popular tools and techniques used in project management. These are examples of only a few tools and techniques. Have a look at your summary notes for a complete list of popular tools and techniques as voted by experienced project managers, as well as project management software. And that brings us to the end of our first lesson. We now have an understanding of basic project management concepts. In this lesson, we learned about the characteristics of a project, it being a temporary endeavor that aims to achieve a unique goal that brings about change. We considered the members involved or affected by projects known as stakeholders, and learned about the 5 phases of a project lifecycle, including initiation, planning, execution, controlling, and closing. We considered the triple constraint, scope, time, and cost, and its role in achieving project success. And we also discussed 2 popular project methodologies, namely Waterfall and Agile. And finally, we looked at the availability of tools and techniques to promote efficiency and accuracy in the 10 project management knowledge areas. In our next lesson, we will unpack the first phase of the project management lifecycle, the initiation phase. We'll discuss the requirements to define and clarify the project scope, consider various feasibility studies, and find ways to manage stakeholder expectations, as well as finally learn how to create a project charter. Thank you for joining. Until next time.